This is the Recycling, Scrap Metal, Commodities, and Economic Report, October 13, 2025. Produced by Bentley Roll-Off Trailers to support our customers, suppliers, and partners. U.S. weekly raw steel production fell to 1.749 million tons, up 7.4% from last year and up 2.3% year to date. This is on slow U.S. manufacturing and 50% steel tariff protection. WTI crude oil price fell to $58.20 a barrel, as Chinese oil demand is forecasted to decline starting in 2026. This is on massive Chinese spending on wind and solar, as 50% of all Chinese cars are now electric vehicles. Also on the warning by the U.S. of new additional Chinese tariffs, which we seem to have backed off of yesterday. U.S. weekly crude oil production rose to 13.629 million barrels per day, just off December's record high. Possible Russian oil sanctions are coming, so the U.S. is preparing to increase exports. Note that the U.S. is already the number 2 crude oil exporter. The U.S. weekly crude oil rig count fell to 418, but it's been trending up as we are positioned to increase production further. But if lower prices continue, they will bring lower U.S. production. Scrap steel number 1 HMS composite price was steady at $311.67 a gross ton, on a good balance of supply and demand. Hot rolled coil steel price fell to $40.70 per hundredweight, which is $8.14 a ton, despite soft demand, good supply, and tariff protection. Copper price fell to $4.84 a pound on the warning by the U.S. of the new 100% Chinese tariffs, but continued supply disruptions in Chile and Indonesia. Aluminum price rose to $1.25 a pound, which is $27.50 a metric ton, a 3-year high on tight supply and good demand. The U.S. dollar index, which is the U.S. currency versus other global currencies. When the U.S. dollar falls, commodities priced in dollars typically rises. It fell 1% for the week to 99. This was mostly due, though, to political uncertainty in France and Japan. U.S. August government budget deficit increased, as in got worse, to $345 billion for the month to $1.97 trillion through 11 months for a total of $37.9 trillion. Record tariffs and the good economy helped increase receipts by $38 billion to $344 billion, but expenditures grew by $2 billion to $689 billion despite program and people cuts. U.S. October U of M Consumer Sentiment Survey fell slightly to 55, remaining fairly low. Sentiment of current conditions rose and future expectations fell. The long-term inflation expectation is a high 3.7% versus the government's 2% target. Atlanta Federal Reserve Q3 GDP Now forecast fell slightly to a great 3.8%, which is much higher than many forecasters. See the blue line. Tariffs and Chinese rare earth export limitations are key issues. Wall Street's Dow Jones Industrial Average fell a big 1,278 points to 45,480 on the threats of the massive new Chinese tariffs, which, as said, we seem to have backed off of yesterday. Every auto plant in the U.S. could shut within 8 weeks without Chinese rare earth magnets. Worse is that F-15s, B-2 bombers, and nuclear submarines here in the U.S. cannot be maintained in that they all have Chinese rare earth magnets. This report is brought to you by Bentley Roll-Off Trailers, Gondola Trailers, Lugger Trucks, and Roll-Off Trailer Parts, and of course, Roll-Off Truck Parts. This is Greg Brown reporting. As always, feel free to call or email me with any questions, and we hope all have a safe and profitable week.